Doctor, um, how did it feel? For example, leaving your family. For example, your children.
Just we have one, but yes, we left him. He's still there.
He's still. For example, this child learning that my parents are shifting from the United States to Uganda. Perhaps even the grandkids. Can we say that?
We have no grandkids yet, but
the family. How did it feel like, permanently or not permanently?
We go back every year for a short time. But so there were two things. Really, we had extended family, siblings of ourselves, our son, and my mother. The other parents were gone, but my mother was still alive, and she was at that point in her late 80s. She was 89. And you think, well, maybe she was already 90. And you think, can I leave my mother? Not every. Now that might not be the right decision for everyone
at the moment.
But she said, I am excited for you. I will support this. She was a lady of faith. She herself and my father had shifted from the U.S. to Brazil with a job he had. It was secular. It was not, mission work. But my father was offered a great opportunity. He worked for a major automobile company based in the U.S. They had a big operation in Brazil. And my mother at the time, she had a brother who was very ill. His mother was dead. I think all the parents were gone. But she had done this herself for a different reason. But she understood the decision. She understood the challenges. She was leaving us behind, me and my sister. And she said, I understand. And, we explained what we were doing. She didn't expect us to be missionaries either. But she was supportive. The question, but what if she were not supportive? What if she had a big illness, something? It might not be right for us. You know what I'm saying? For us, and this is again how the Lord works. He didn't give us an impossible situation. He gave us choices. We might have decided, as many people do who become short-term missionaries, I cannot leave my family completely. But maybe I can go to this country for 3 months, work, and then return. And then the following year, go back. And many people do that, particularly in health and medicine, some in teaching. What is it to figure out what God wants? Requires listening and prayer, presence in the Word, and again, what do you hear from people? What if, my sister had said, for example, well, it is okay with our mom, but it is not okay with me, because you, Richard, are leaving me alone. All the problems will now be mine.
I can feel that.
Yeah. My sister didn't say that. My sister said, wow, you should go.
So in other words, God created all the possible conditions for you to take up your ministry well.
And so that may not work for everyone, but God will create. If he has an opportunity for you, then to me, I have faith he will provide ways in which it can work. It may not be the ways it worked for me or the two of us, Catherine and me, but the way it will work for his purpose for you. Trust him.
Just trusting God.
Yeah.
Well, God will always create a way for you to fulfill his mission. What you have to do is just to trust God.
And one thing Catherine says that I will add to that, she has an expression, the Holy Spirit always works in hindsight, meaning as you look back, you see, he's been preparing me this way. He has prepared me that way. You step back and you say, God is good. He has really
Well, I can understand. In other words, this is the time you come to realize, oh, this is the reason why I was in this place. And you realize that actually God was preparing me.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And so he certainly did that with us. Now it took a while. We weren't ready, maybe, in our spiritual growth, in professional development. Who knows? We weren't necessarily ready 20 years ago. We were being faithful. We were serving in different ways. But when the time came, when we received this invitation from Brian Dennison, who's on the faculty here, we got returned to the U.S., we didn't even know how to become missionaries. I mean, we knew they existed, but there's no book. We hadn't read the book, if there are books. And in fact, we didn't say anything to each other when we hung up the phone with Brian for a few weeks. We were each turning it over in our heads. One night, we finished our supper, and we pushed the plates aside, and we finally decided we will talk with each other. But at the first was, how do we do, could we do that? Brian said that. We trusted him because he had worked here. We knew we'd met the students. We knew things. We'd not been here. And we said, well, let's find out. We don't know enough, but here are some people we can talk to. We spoke to one of the former students who'd been in our home a few times. We spoke to Brian. We spoke to the director of UCU Partners in Pennsylvania. We spoke again to our former pastor. We spoke to these different people. Crazy thing, we've been invited to consider going to UCU. What do we do?
Where do we start from?
Where do we start from? And so, again, we were, the Lord was faithful, and we were guided to the right people, to make questions. We came here, Catherine said, well, I'm moving there. And she didn't say this in a bad way, but she said, I've got to see it first. That's a good thing.
Let's go and first see.
Yeah, let's go and first see. And one of the things, that we did a couple of times, so we came and we stayed on campus for a couple of weeks. But she said, you know what I want to do one day? I want to shop. What do the stores look like? What do they say? We've never been here. We've never been to Africa. So, where do you start? And it was a very practical thing from my wife, which is we need to buy food or things for the house. Where do we go? And so we spent a day just wandering around Mukono. Very basic, but you need to know, right?
Yeah. In other words, you drastically became part of the community instantly, that you had to figure out things.
Yes, had to figure out, for example, if you were trying to cross Ginger Road and a boda is coming, you do not cross. You wait.
You even know Ginger Road?
Yeah. We saw it, but like the traffic, for an American, the traffic and the driving here, people, our friends back in the U.S. say, do you drive? No, we don't.
We don't.
Some other Americans do. We have chosen not to. We don't move much, but we get a driver when we do. It's just safer. We always sleep under a mosquito net. Always.
Always.
And that, we've not had malaria. I'm not saying, but in fact, I joke, our U.S. friends will say, is it safe over there? Are you healthy? And we say, yeah, we're healthy. 3 things. 1, always sleep under a mosquito net. Ugandan audience is probably laughing. Second thing, always drink clean water. Always, do not change. Always know, is it boiled? Is it from the potable taps? What? The third thing, look both ways crossing Ginger Road, then look both ways again, and maybe even again before you move.
Before you move.
Yeah. And if you do those 3 things, you will survive Uganda, very likely.
In other words, your call to ministry came along with a lot of adventure and a lot of learning. That at a point you came to realize that there are things you had not actually even thought about, or a life you couldn't figure out that one day I will be in this kind of state. And so to someone watching us, your call to ministry or your calling sometimes will come with many changes, just like you've heard from Dr. Ranger, on how you view things, on how you know things, and even the environment as well. For instance, Dr. Richard, let me ask you this. Comparing to the time you arrived in Uganda to date, what are the things you see like you've actually coped up with and you've actually embedded yourself within the culture of Africans in Uganda currently?
So a very small vocabulary, as much as anything, very little Uganda. But what I can do, the first weeks we were here, I did not do this. But it's coming close to the dinner hour, and we are missing some type of food that we need. I will just walk out Tech Park Gate and into Buguju. I know certain shops. Was I willing to do that, to step around Buguju and the markets? You know, my wife shops at Chico Market here in McCormick. She, very often, we are the only whites we see. In fact, there's no, I mean, we're the white. We're looking through our eyes. We're not seeing any other.
No any white.
No, right. And that can be, you know, people can say on our side, I like Africans, but, you know, do I want to be by myself? Well, after a while, you just become comfortable here. And part of it is, in Uganda, part of the culture, people will acknowledge you. If you're walking down the road and someone's coming the other way, you can't like do no, you have to look at them. You may greet them. You just and you show one that you respect them as someone else, another person, and you're also showing you're comfortable. You fit. You may look different from the other people in the town, but that's a part of it. If you feel comfortable, many people know who we are over there. They may not know our names, but we're the Muzungus who live on the other side of the fence, and we smile, and we are welcoming because we are welcomed, because Ugandans are really, to us, some of the most welcoming people in the world. So if you respond to that, if you can't do that, if you're guarded, if you're suspicious, if you fear, maybe mission in another culture is not the right thing for you.
Okay.
But if you can move through those stages, you know, I've ridden bodas in Kampala. Not a lot, but, you know, we took a trip to Tanzania in 23 as guests of a fellow who was here in seminary. Well, what we had to do was get up early in the morning, pick a boda right outside the gate down to the taxi stage, and then take a taxi into the old taxi park in Kampala, where it's still dark, walk with our friend down to the new taxi park to take a different taxi to the Uganda-Tanzania border. That's not a trip we would have taken the first year we were here. It's not a trip, you know, not everyone would enjoy taking in, you know, from the U.S.
Yeah, surely.
But now, would I do that at 2 a.m? I don't know what I would do, but again, now trusting God and having a sense of adventure and watching him, that small gift of a sense of adventure, he tests and he grows.
Okay.
And so we, as a consequence, each day, we give thanks for each day we are here. Each day we're a little more comfortable. We have a fellowship that meets every Wednesday out on the patio here. And we have had people from 6 different countries in that fellowship. You know, people from the community here, students, staff, or what. And we know that we are different, but we also know that in faith we are united. And the other thing I think too, we're not sitting there with our friends as like the important missionaries from the U.S. We're brother and sister Christians who happen to come from different cultures. We listen to each other, we love each other, and we laugh together. And so for us, I mean, there are missionaries who they're preaching the word in some remote place to the unreached. We are, I think, living in a university community, being faithful, respecting, responding, encouraging the faithfulness of brother and sister Christians here, mentoring students as we are called, and fulfilling the role of fellow believers in a place as God is equipping us all to serve Him. Some, many will stay on. They're just Ugandans. They are growing. We have the privilege and the role of being servants who our Ugandan friends respect, and they welcome insights from us. We welcome insights from them. We are building each other up.
Okay. In other words, the spirit of brotherhood should not die in you.
Not at all.
Great mission.
It becomes very critically important.
It's not all, someone watching us, it's not all about you.
Or me, or what, yeah.
Yeah, but about what God thinks and the people around you. In other words, having a spirit of brotherhood while in your ministry is something essential, just as you've heard from Dr. Ranger. You said, appearing before this fellowship, you don't appear to be, I am the missionary here.
Right. You all sit, and I will do the talk. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you are all one, same, and brothers and sisters.
And we have learned things. We've learned many things about how to live here. You know, Catherine has a gomesi from our neighbor. You know, I've had some shirts, and so we have worn Ugandan clothing. We eat Ugandan food. Yeah. People say, so what about matoke? We do eat matoke. We have other favorite things, but yes, if it is served, that is what we eat. You know, there are certain things, many things that are different about our food here, but that's okay. We are, the worship is different. That's okay. This is a big world, and even the African countries are different one from another. Africa is not a country. It's a multitude of different cultures.
Yeah.
Learning that, appreciating that, and learning to laugh. And I've read somewhere, if you can learn to tell a joke in another country, that is meaningful and causes the other person to laugh, and to laugh in turn at their story, that's a big step. That being able to share laughter across cultures is a gift. It's a blessing.
It's really a blessing. I think I can crack laughters.
Yeah.
I think in like 4 languages. Anyway.
Yeah.
So you mean having a sense or having a gift of embedding easily in different
as
cultures.
best as we can, yes. And also being able to make mistakes and to laugh at that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, don't be so proud that you're afraid of taking a step or afraid of this conversation or what, because you might make a mistake. No, be out there and And then people forgive you, people laugh with you, and that becomes very important in a way. Teaching. I teach in the School of Business, as you told our audience. The course that I teach is called Corporate Governance and Business Ethics. And that is, okay, what is that? What it is for business students, how do you structure, how do you design a business organization so that it can start and it can run for an indefinite period? I'm not Ugandan. I have some information to present that is more international or global or not country specific, but I also have to learn to understand my students and figure out ways to make some things that I say mean something more universal. I can do that.
Okay.
Maybe not perfectly, but I can do that, and I'm willing to try. And so my students have respected that, and they feel they learn from me. There's all kinds of things. If I come over from America and I am only thinking American music, American food, American culture, I'll be able to convey some information, but it will not mean the same to my Ugandan students. So what I come up with, we use the expression in the mission world, I learned, not that I'm an expert, third culture. I come from the American culture. I am working, living, serving in the Ugandan culture. I don't really become Ugandan. I become a hybrid. I become a third culture. And maybe some of the students or good friends who spend time with us, they learn more about America than the average Ugandan.
Surely. I think as well, I've learned a lot about the American culture just by associating with you.
Others who are here,
and some of other colleagues who live there.
Paul, the Apostle Paul, what was he? He was a Hebrew.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't know about Antioch or Thessalonica or Corinth. He developed skills and gifts to be able to speak to those people in Greek. And, Peter was a Galilean fisherman. He was part of one sector of the Holy Land, and they weren't even regarded well by like Judea. He was in American English, we'd say he was a hick. He was a country boy.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, if that makes sense.
He was flexible.
He was, and he was used by God to carry the word all the way to Rome. Yeah.
In different parts of the area.
Because those cultures, we think of them as one, they were very different. So anyhow, I guess the message for those thinking God may be calling them, Catherine's gift of hospitality helped start us. We were willing to have Ugandan students stay at our home and spend time with us. We were the home team, right? It was our house, our food and our dog. But we were willing to cross bridges that way. The gift of hospitality, welcoming others, like the welcomes we have received, helps the people grow, the welcomer and the person being welcomed. It helps the church to grow. It helps the community of faith to grow. And to participate in that is fairly easy and is a great blessing. And I guess I'm sitting here with you in a sitting room in an apartment in Tech Park on the UCU campus because of God's grace and our ability to take each step and say, yeah, I can do that. And it's fun and it's interesting and I am learning.
Surely. Now, Dr. Richard, along that path of missionary,
Mm-hmm.
and since you joined that calling, in other words, since you started working on it, what has God been, something like God has been teaching you in this season of missionary work? What is that specific thing you've learned?
I think I am more willing, if you will, to meet people on the road. I was more of an introvert. I could work in a business office environment where I knew those people over time, but I was more of a private person. I'm still a private person, but I can be stopped by a student, and it's like, let us talk.
Regardless whether you know them or not.
Yes, and of course, being here, we're pretty easy to spot. There's only a handful of Zungus here on campus, and so that's a vulnerability and a gift that has evolved, and I still have to grow with. And I think I think also in that classroom situation, or like in our fellowship, in so many situations, you have to listen with both your ears, because are your people to whom you were talking, excuse me, do they understand what you were saying? And that is, well, you have to watch them. You have to get that sense. I have joked with my students, for example, in my first class, and the new semester happens to have been today. I said, I will make a trade with you. I know we Americans speak English very fast. We tend more quickly usually than Ugandans. So I promise, particularly since we're in the class and you want to know what I'm saying, I will speak more slowly and carefully. But there's a trade. Ugandans, I will tell them, and your audience will determine whether I'm correct. When they speak English, when you speak English, you speak softly. So often you speak very softly.
Really?
Yeah, it's true. I know that when you speak your own language, because I've seen you coming 2 by 2 or 3, and you're on Sports Road here on campus, you're speaking loud.
Actually, when it comes to English, we slow down.
We slow down and quiet. And I said, I need you, this room has noise. If you will speak loud, I will speak slowly. And so that's just little things like that. I don't know if that makes sense to your audience, but
very much.
That's something I've experienced.
Okay. Dr. Ranger, someone who is there doubting, or someone who is lacking, there is a sense where someone could feel like, maybe I don't have anything to do with this world. I have no purpose, in other words. Someone to think that maybe they have no calling. What would be your message to that person?
Start with where you are. Start with where you are. Are you part of a faith community? Are you part of a community? As we said earlier in our discussion, who among the people you see and you talk to are people whom God may be placing in your life for a reason? Be attentive to Him. Be in a prayerful way. Be in a way of gratitude, so that you can hear His voice among the voices
around
you. And then what needs to be done? You don't know what it might be with youth. It might be just within your own family. It might be serving as a witness. But God nudges you. God calls you. So maybe it's true, you're not ready to be called as a missionary to another country or a different culture, even here within Uganda, where we have so many cultures. But God has work for us all. And maybe you start small, as I've learned to say, but serve.
Just serve.
Just serve. And as you serve, God, who is faithful and who needs servants, will equip you to move farther.
As long as you start.
Yes.
In other words, start where you are. For example, you're a businessman. You had your job, but that's where God got you from until you're here. In other words, a teacher, if you are teaching, start from your class. Or if you're a father at home, start from your family. And that's where God will grace you from.
Yes. And he will. And we've had, not all of our family, extended family, are believers. We had a long conversation one evening, neither of us will ever forget it, with the husband of a cousin of my wife's. He professes to be, he's a non-believer. He professes to be an atheist. He's not angry about it. But, and he said, he kept asking, but what do you expect? What are you going to do? What are you going to accomplish? And we kept saying, we don't really know. God will accomplish. I said, the God we believe in has a purpose for us.
In other words, to someone who is a non-believer, will always make you feel like you're not on the right path.
Or something. He was challenging us. But yet, and we've seen him again. He's not a believer this time. I don't know what will happen. But he I think sees this mystery. God can call the person who believes and can take him, the cousin, he has never been to Africa. He was a filmmaker. I mean, he's been many places. But I don't get it, but I accept it. These people, they're doing what they are called to do, and I respect that. I hope there is more, not that he respects us, but that he can see that a living God works in the lives of real people, doing strange and unpredictable things.
Wow.
But that's what we believe, and we have been affirmed so many times. We raise money. We are missionaries, so we have some of our own, and much that we raise from friends, from churches, and what. Two of the people who contribute to us are Jewish.
They're Jewish.
Yeah, I mean they're not Christians.
They are Jews.
They're Jewish, but they, in their world, in Judaism, they understand mitzvah. They understand serving, and they say, we believe different things. We believe in a way. We name a God, and we're the old believers in Judaism. The Christians, you've added Jesus, but these people are daring to do something. We would respect that in our Jewish culture. These are our friends.
Oh.
I mean, that when you have that, that's a gift. How will God use that in their hearts? I don't know. But all I'm saying is, the God who is faithful has led us to support from people who do not share our exact beliefs.
Okay. In other words, someone should be ready to interact with even non-believers.
You may get a conversion, praise God, but we're, the apostles didn't convert everybody they saw,
Sure.
right? So, and sometimes the conversion didn't come, Jesus spoke with Nicodemus.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, Nicodemus has helped burying him.
Well, yeah, that's actually amazing. So this implies that You never know when that soul will grow.
You don't.
You don't know.
You just serve.
You just serve.
Yeah.
In other words, just do your job and leave the rest to God to accomplish.
That's a test, and do I do that all the time? I fall short. Catherine does. But that's really, as we might say in American English from maybe a generation ago, that's the ticket.
Okay.
You just, and because he is faithful. And again, we're here. I'm sitting, talking to people in largely Ugandan audience, I expect. We know each other. I never expected this.
Really? Yeah.
You didn't probably expect it, right?
Yeah, and right.
So that is God at work. And not that I'm great or possessed of any particular secret, but because I agreed to serve, to listen, and to serve, and to put to test the things that God says He will do. And for us, as I think I said earlier in the conversation, we have the best jobs we've ever had.
Because you looked for an international job.
Yeah, I was looking, didn't expect this. I would have been paid much, much more money, I will assure you, by the international job that I did not get. But I have a job that I know brings me rewards, I believe brings others rewards, and is allowing me to be used by the Lord for His purpose. I have a better understanding of that than I did 20 some years ago. And He's in charge. But I do believe we have met students who have told us we are important for them to see a couple, a husband and wife, who have agreed to leave their nets, as it were.